was actually going to offer Professor Fisk, if he's still around, I'm going to give him my note cards and let him deliver my speech as well. The energy level is a little difficult to match. But in all seriousness, Sophie, the entire world leadership team, other leaders, dignitaries in this room for this important forum, thank you very much. Those that had the vision to be able to start this forum, you're visionaries. You're really, truly inspiring. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. We're making progress, and with some of the examples I'll show, hopefully you'll see that, but there's work to be done with all the statistics that we've been able to see. I gotta be honest right up front, my own personal bias, I'm not sure what the issue is, all right? I just am not. And so when I was asked to be able to speak here, for me, it's a non-issue. I was born in 1970, and since the day I could remember, the dear mother of mine worked every day, just like my father did. Me, my 3 sisters, my brother, aimed for everything equally. We were afforded every single opportunity. As a father today of 2 wonderful girls and a wonderful son, I expect that they'll have equal opportunity to be able to pursue whatever they want to pursue. So from a personal perspective, just to put it out there, I'm not sure what the issue is. I really do struggle with that. But there clearly is an issue, given the statistics that you've seen in leadership roles in countries, in companies, and so on and so forth. We need to do something. Before I get into what we at Pfizer think through our differences, we innovate and we impact lives, because obviously we're a healthcare company, I want to tell you a quick story. I don't know if there are any Denzel Washington fans. Denzel is a prolific U.S. actor. Thank you, Omar. I want to be a futurist or a shaper, by the way, when I come back in my next life. So Denzel made a movie called Remember the Titans. It's an American football story about a school system that was integrated in Alexandria, Virginia in 1971. I'll tell you a story about a young man that went to that school in 1987. It's a chemistry class. There's a middle-aged, white male, American teacher welcoming students on the first day, right? Every child goes in. He happens to be the only black child in the room. The professor comes to him, says, "Young man, go to the back of the class, put your head down, and I'll give you a C for the semester." Right? Everybody else is getting hello, welcome, who are you, what's going on? In this integrated school back in 1971, fast forward 16 years, 1987, he's a junior in high school. He's getting what is considered an advanced diploma, so you need 4 years of science, in addition to other requirements. Chemistry class, the welcome is, go to the back of the class, put your head down, and I'll give you a C at the end of the semester. I'll come back to that story a little bit later to be able to bring home some of the points I want to make today. Today, though, what I do want to talk to you about, something that's passionate for us at Pfizer, passionate for me, is really how does D&I impact improving health and health in the region? We're doing this on a global basis, but I'd like to show you some examples of things that we're doing here in the region. I want to talk about Pfizer's commitment to D&I. We've made a significant amount of progress. We have a long, long way to go, but I want to talk a little bit about that. But what's important to me in the theme of actual actions, a call to action, is really walking away and saying, how do we go beyond D&I statistics to really embed inclusion in the work that we do? Will the video play?
راحت رغم أننا دايم سوا. بس راحت ما يعني ما عاد ترجع.
So I wanted to share this video with you because we launched this program back in 2017, exactly a year ago. I think it's an important reminder of how D&I can really add value not only to our organizational culture, but to the health outcomes of patients around the world. It has become a part of our innovation agenda. It's really become a part of our business fabric as we try to find ways to be able to treat patients of all backgrounds, all genders, different communities. Our understanding of their health needs, our understanding of the potential solutions, our understanding of how we can partner and understand them better has become part of the way we work here in Africa, Middle East on a global basis. Again, as I say, we've got a long ways to go, but we're starting to see some improvements. And I wanted to show you this video because I think you'll agree with me when I tell you about some of the statistics. This is extremely important. And this is just one example from here in the region. So this was a campaign that we ran in Saudi Arabia. It's called the Just Check campaign. What we encountered as we were launching a novel breast cancer medication across the world is that the uptake, despite the prevalence rates, the uptake in Saudi Arabia was significantly behind. As we dug in more and more, we found out that 55% of breast cancer patients in Saudi Arabia actually show up at the doctor's office when the breast cancer is so advanced, there's no treatment options. Right? So a younger population, 55% of them show up at a state when it's terminal. There are no treatment options. 50% of Saudi women are not aware of the importance of self-examination or early detection work. When you look at the social stigma behind breast cancer, especially in rural areas where there are not an abundance of screening programs or just don't exist at all, families don't want to know, females don't want to know. And that is causing this presentation of terminal patients at a very late stage, despite the advancements that medicine has made in terms of treatment of breast cancer. So a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, we decided to create an outreach program to really be able to raise awareness. And we decided to do so by targeting social media because of the use of social media across the female population and across families in Saudi Arabia. And again, an early sign of insights, inclusion, really thinking about the patient, but also having the perspective of our employees to be able to understand why is it, despite the fact that women in Saudi Arabia have high rates or equivalent rates of breast cancer, why are they not showing up to the doctor? Why are we seeing so many terminal patients? I can tell you, again, some early data from YouTube and Instagram. What we've been able to see is over 8 million realized impressions. Our videos have been watched 2 million times. We've reached almost 2 million people. Our videos have been watched over 500,000 times. Our ultimate aim in being able to raise this awareness, obviously, is to drive that engagement and that conversation at the doctor's office, to help females self-examine and be able to raise awareness about the dangers of breast cancer. But ultimately, to me, what this shows is we've got a lot of differences. No matter what our background and our perspective is, we have a voice. There are ways to be able to solve our issues when we have the perspectives of everyone involved in order to be able to do this. We've got multiple examples of these sort of initiatives. I won't bore you with all the details, but for us here in the region specifically, what we basically started to do is to really get that female perspective into the way we think about things, into the solution, into the problem, and understanding female patients just as well as we understand male patients. So the gender component, but also the broader component of experience, background, and so forth is really part of what we're doing. So one example, I want to tie it into the broader sort of perspective that we all know. We've seen some of the statistics, and even last year I saw some of this. McKinsey has done studies, Gallup has done studies, a bunch of universities have done studies. Professor Fisk was talking about a number of different things. We all know that there's a significant need. What I'm hoping you see with programs like Just Check is the largest biopharma company really starting to address the needs of females in our region in order to be able to advance healthcare as we go forth. The video is an important reminder of the sort of outreach that we can have, but the sort of perspective that we need to have and the conversations we need to have within our organization. So my ask of you now is, what do we do? How do we keep these sort of programs moving forward? The problem, obviously, is not an easy one. We all understand that. As I always say, the issue of diversity and inclusion, the issue of gender parity, everybody understands it, everybody realizes it. The question is, how do we solve it? I think that's where we tend to get a little bit stuck. From my perspective and from Pfizer's perspective, we've decided to start the action and really be innovative about how we approach it. So programmatic sort of initiatives to be able to address the issues is one thing to say, I think as Sophie said in the morning, one thing to say it's an issue, it's another thing to do something about it. So in the region, we've been able to institute a number of programs. So some numbers again, in Saudi Arabia, we've gone from a baseline of 0 to approximately 3% of our workforce are females. Again, work to be done, but we've taken significant action in order to be able to do so. In North Africa, almost 40% of our employees are females in support functions. Approximately 34% of our employees in commercial functions are actually female. Across Africa, Middle East, I think somebody said a statistic that was a little higher. I thought we were doing well. We need to aim more. 3 out of the 10 general managers, the coveted P&L roles that we have, are owned by women today. And lastly, one more statistic for you, which I think is extremely important. In times of change, across diversity and inclusion, we tend to lose folks of diverse backgrounds. We're going through such a restructuring at this point. At all levels of professional staff, we've been able to increase our female count and representation. What's most important for me is we've been able to raise the highest level, the vice president level that we have in the region, plus 12%. Again, from where we're starting, you may say there's more work to be done. I would agree with you. But the fact of the matter is we're adding as opposed to being able to lose. Another watch out as all of us pay attention to this area. In times of restructuring, you tend to have diverse populations leaving in larger numbers than you would otherwise. So this issue, as I said, really goes beyond the statistics. And I want to switch gears and really talk about inclusion. So how do we create that inclusive environment? It's one thing to have a woman at the table. It's one thing to have diverse populations at the table. But what do we do in order to make sure that their voices are heard? From our perspective, I've told you already, we're a healthcare company. So the solutions that we need to find are really community specific. The solutions that we need to find are really gender specific. So the perspectives that we need to be able to bring in really is critical to being able to find the right solutions. If I think of the role that I have myself, from a healthcare perspective, a pharma perspective, scientific-driven industry, compliance is extremely important. We've got commercialization efforts in order to be able to sell our products. If I think of legal and other support functions, if I'm not creating that environment to be able to get all the perspectives that are necessary, whether it be from men or women, if I'm not able to be able to harness all of that, obviously we're not going to be as effective as we could otherwise be. This is the sort of change that we're trying to drive in very programmatic manner across Africa, Middle East. And I want to highlight some of those things for you if I could. No? Okay. Maybe not. So, my apologies. I had an extra slide in there. If I remember from memory, then I'll go after it. We've got an AFME Women's Council and what we call colleague resource groups. The Women's Council is made up of senior leaders, both men and women, that are trying to address strategically and creating the right environment to be able to have the conversations that we need to have. So what do we do to make sure that this D&I conversation is part and parcel of the way we work? We've created a couple of programs to the women that are in the room and for the Pfizer women. The one that says raise your hand, which is an opportunity to really be able to take a bold chance. I think Professor Fish said it, be bold. So many times, as statistics have been able to show, men will tend to raise their hands, whether qualified or not. We have a tendency to think that we are, and women will sit back. And so at Pfizer, knowing that exists, we've initiated a Raise Your Hand initiative, and that's helped a tremendous amount to be able to encourage women to say early in their career, what do I do in order to be able to raise my hand and participate? That doesn't mean it you do it on your own. You've got a lot of support from all of us across the region and on a global basis to be able to raise your hands and participate. We've launched what we call mentoring programs and success circles. These are peer support circles that allow people to be able to share ideas, to take leadership positions, to really be able to get feedback and give feedback, which I think is an important part of the solution as well. As I said, there is no doubt that we agree that there's an issue. The how seems to be the struggle. And at least in those three examples, hopefully you're starting to get a sense of a regional women's council. By the way, this regional women's council is tied all the way back to global, back to the CEO and direct reports to the CEO. An ability to be able to say, raise your hand, really be bold and encouraged and supported to be able to do that. And then finally, mentoring and success circles, which are helping to be able to support one another in the initiatives that we drive. This inclusive behavior, by the way, beyond the Just Check program that I just highlighted, I want to tell you about some innovative solutions we've been able to find. So with Pfizer, given our broad portfolio and our broad therapeutic area coverage, hemophilia is an area that we specialize in. If you know kids that have hemophilia, bleed rates, potential sort of lifestyle changes that need to be had, is a significant concern for parents because the kids sometimes tend to be a little less concerned about it. We've actually launched an app specifically targeted at kids, at parents, to help them understand what they need to do to live a healthy lifestyle. So this is an app called Hemo Heroes. We've launched I'm going to try to say this the right way, Molil Sigar Fakat in Kuwait, which is translated as saying not just for kids. So when we think about vaccinations, there's a tendency around the world to say it's just for kids. There are high risk populations in Kuwait that we found that are at risk for pneumococcal diseases. And so this initiative, Mo Lil Sigar Fakat, has really helped us to be able to address some of those needs and begin to address some of those myths that exist across Kuwait. Here in the UAE, actually in the Northern Emirates, where you don't have the sort of reach of specialists in rural areas, we've been able to launch a telemedicine program called REACH. And so we're seeing an ability to be able to connect patients in rural areas to physicians and specialists across the city centers. And again, I highlight all of these to say, this is what diversity and inclusion really being embedded, being part of the fabric of the organization really starts to drive. Our patient population is unique. Our patient population is different. Our patient population requires that we think differently, that we operate differently versus one gender, one community deciding what's going to be done on a global basis. And hopefully these start to highlight for you some of the changes we've been able to make. So I want to go back to that story that I started off with. So that young man happened to be me. I happened to be an immigrant from Ethiopia at the age of 11 in 1981. So in 1987, 6 years into my American journey, don't know why that guy decided to tell me that. I was still relatively naive about diversity and inclusion. As far as I knew, he was just telling me what to do. This is a time when I'm still taking English as a second language and things of that nature. So you go to the back of the class, and I can tell you, in retrospect, the way that made me feel was not very welcome. Couldn't understand it, couldn't really grasp it. So we are sending different messages and different sort of opportunities, opening different opportunities to our workforce, and this is what we're talking about. Some of it is as blatant as the example that I gave you. It's unique and a bit, I don't know what to say, a bit, that I'm in this position now, kind of running the region for a pharmaceutical company, when my first chemistry class was go to the back of the class and I'll give you a C. Whatever that was, it was. What I'm here to really say in closing is, I think you can see in the examples that we provided for us here in the region, that there's significant opportunity, there's significant value, there's business value to be had. From a society perspective, it's absolutely paramount that we do the sorts of things that we're trying to do and really embed it. But if I close with one thing, I got a quote from Oprah Winfrey, and it's really actually very simple and straightforward. Stop wishing and start doing. So we've talked about this D&I issue. I think this whole will forum has existed now for 9 years plus. A number of different forums like this exist. The question is, what are we going to do in order to be able to programmatically address these issues and go forth? Hopefully I've given you a few ideas from a Pfizer perspective, but looking forward to the conversation and the discussion as we go forth in the next couple of days. Thank you very much.